Welcome everyone to another, what do we call this show again? We call it like basically
Celebrity profiles,
celebrity profiles. We're
celebrity
looking
by
at
design.
celebrity by design. We're looking at the profiles of certain figures out in the world, different kinds of figures. And today we're going to look at a very interesting character, Jordan Peterson, who has, out of seemingly nowhere in the past 2 years or so, suddenly hit, maybe 2, 3 years max, kind of hit the world scene like a storm and has been here since and growing and growing and growing. And he has a very interesting profile and kind of the decision to look into his profile in particular sparked. I mean, we talked about it for a while that like, let's have a look at Jordan Peterson's. But a couple of weeks ago, I was watching one of his interviews and I was listening to it and I was like, I've been diving into my human design experience a lot deeper and I'm starting to hear the design come out in the way people speak a lot more. Like, oh, I can hear certain channels being activated. And I was like, I can hear a certain channel of Jordan Peterson's in the way that he was speaking. And I was like, oh, is that true? And looked up his design. And sure enough, that channel was very much part of his profile. And that excited me. And so I started looking at his profile more. And I'm like, oh, this is actually a very interesting profile to look at because it's quite clear to see what he's up to and kind of why he's taken the world stage by storm in this way and really kind of quite living his profile. Like his profile is actually a very easy one to look at and go, oh, this is it just speaks it right here in front of us is very clearly who this person is. So welcome everyone, and I'm Damien Bohler, and this is Fabrice Bohler, and we are going to dive into Jordan Peterson and get really deep into his profile.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start, showing it on the screen now. The great thing about his profile, as you were saying, is that it's just so easy and obvious. And it's obvious whether you look at the gene keys or the human design, and even more when you bring the two together. I mean, we can start because I can already see us wanting to jump straight away into the circuitry and channels and all the gene keys and all of that. But let's not skip the basics, we're talking here about a manifestor.
Yes. Yeah.
You're a manifestor. How do you see him being a how do you see that it's so clear that he is a manifestor?
Impact. He seems to run on impact. It's all about the level of impact that he provides to people. Watching watching some of his videos, his lectures, it's like an intensity of impact that is coming directed at the person. And it's interesting because I have I get into a teaching channel role when I start working, but I'm very different. I'm an ego manifestor with the 1156, but he's an emotional manifestor with the 1762. So these two channels converging on the throat, the manifestor channel and the ajna converging on the throat, provides a very articulate and emotionally charged impact on the person listening. So when you listen to him, you are going to feel hit by his experience, by what he's sharing is going to change your state in some way very, very clearly. And it's striking when you listen to Jordan Peterson. It's like being whacked by an emotional intensity. No matter where you listen to him, that's the experience. It's a very strong charge of emotion. And also he seems to go through constant waves of heightened intensity and expression in the world and an almost vanishing disappearance, and with an inconsistency to him. So these are kind of like the main manifestor features that show up for me.
Yeah, and some of the things you said, I mean, you're talking already about the channels, and he has 3 channels going to the throat. So there's so much that can be expressed there. And we'll get more into the details of the channels. You manage, the impact that you feel his impact as a manifestor. And impact, is a keyword that's also associated with the 5-1 and, with the 5th line in general. It's all about that. And you can see in him so strongly both the 5th line and the 1st. And the 5th line,
Yeah.
the fifth line is always a, a bittersweet line, because the very same line that can take you to stardom and fame and get you, a lot of success and financial reward, and and being invited on all the biggest shows in the world and all of that, giving him the life that he has now, it also, gave him a lot of trouble and a lot of negative projections as well. That's also the, the double-edged sword of the projecting field of the fifth line, is those projectors, half the people are going to love you, half are going to hate you. And that's the way it's going to be. So he's all the time, and he struggles with that. And sometimes when I watch his interviews, I'm like, oh man, I wish he knew about human design. Like,
Yeah.
I wish he could just know that, hey, you're 5-1, and that's why you're getting like an insane amount of projections on you, like more so than other people. And also, the one of the keywords for the fifth line is heretical. And he's surely been this way with a lot of the things that he says, and he's always going against the grain, and standing on his own, as a leader as much as he can, and going his own way. So, and the first line, I see in him this, um it's like he really, really gets the gravity of the situation, on Earth and with humans nowadays. And like, I can see all the time when he's speaking, like his first line almost like it's shaking, and he knows that right now we don't have the foundation of Earth, and the foundation of humanity is really not that solid, and he speaks on that, and you can feel that it's deeply troubling for him. Like, it's really deeply troubling. And also, he spends so much time digging into, like, he was talking, on the Joe Rogan podcast, he was talking about, um he read, like, just on one topic, he read like 200 books just to get a sense of that topic, 200 fucking books on that one topic too. So, which, 17 SQ, 5-1, like the first line, digging in there, like there's a lot that can go into it, and we'll talk about the full channel here. But yeah, I'm sure you're 4-1 with the 17 SQ, with the 17 here. I'm sure you also love to, read a lot and dig in, and remember all this knowledge.
Yeah, I have a stack of books by my bedside table all the time. Some nights I will read like 5 pages out of 5 different books before I go to bed. Um, so I definitely understand that experience, of the line one radiance, or the line one in the design part of things, the unconscious or innate desire to go deep. But I just really like the fifth line is just so easy to see. It's like it's very easy to project on Jordan Peterson. It's like on social media, whenever people talk about Jordan Peterson, it's like opinion. You can't not have an opinion about him. You can't not. Some people love him. Some people hate him. No one's neutral. You know, very, very few people are just like, yeah, whatever. I can take either people like, yep, Jordan Peterson has something very valuable to say that we only need to listen to, or he's the devil, and a lot of the time those judgments will come without ever even listening to what he has to say. It's like it's and people will.
His face is already triggering most people.
Exactly. Yeah, and he will say one word and it will just immediately get like one sentence or one phrase or something, and it'll just get taken out of context. Like
Yeah.
everything he says will immediately be taken. Like there's very little forgiveness or very little sense of wanting to feel into a little bit more of what he's saying. And I think, the dual experience of being a 5-1 and a manifestor is going to lead to that. And then also being an emotional manifestor, it's very, seeing his emotional waves. It's like, I don't think I've seen an interview in which he doesn't cry at some point in it. It's like,
especially the last year or so.
yeah, pretty much every interview he gets on, he starts moving to tears. And this is his emotional wave, and it's also like, you can see this as part of the gene keys is very, very interesting here as well. Like this radiance line, 36 radiance, which is part of that manifestor channel. It's
channel.
the 3536. And this is his form of impact. He is impacting through emotional experience and through basically taking on the projection of others. He's like, I'm going to be your savior or your devil, but either way, I'm going to be something to you. and it's going to evoke your emotional experience,
Yep.
and it's going to take you into an emotional experience. And the 35, yeah, well, actually, I was about to get ahead of myself and start talking about circuitry, but I just think that that was the thing that I was hearing in this interview by him. I heard him start talking about like life being an adventure, and when he was talking
Mm-hmm.
about life being an adventure, he wasn't talking about like climbing mountains. He was talking about an emotional adventure. He was talking about the experience of being alive is an adventure. And I was like, that sounds like the 3536, which is like the channel of adventure or the jack of all trades.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I looked up his design and there it is, the 3536. And I was like, this is where he is impacting from. He is impacting through the experience of going on the emotional adventure, the
And
experience. Yeah.
and you can see it in his body, like that's
Yeah.
why he's crying so easily, because it's his humanity really showing up.
Yeah.
And you can feel the turbulence. You can feel in it 36.1. So like, is this emotional theme of humanity and checking the foundation of humanity and being like deeply disturbed or simply touched, or sometimes it's really the state of compassion, or
Mm.
it's just sometimes being like awestruck by beauty, or like just like the range is just so big, and sometimes he cries because of sadness or anger or just being touched by something beautiful. And it's, like Damon was saying, it's in the sphere of radiance, which is directly connected to the physical body, um and to the aura of the person as well, and what they emanate. And in this case, it's directly connecting to the throat. So the reason he is a manifester is because of this channel, and it's starting here from the solar plexus going into the throat.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and then I'm just really fascinated, like as well, when I looked at his design, if you stay up on the human design part, there's the solar plexus, the 3536, which is the emotional impact. And then the 1762, which is a channel that is a logical channel. It's part of the collective logical circuitry, which means that it is all about organizing and sifting through information in the most logical way possible. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the way he seems to organize information. When he speaks, he speaks to statistics and facts fluidly. Like when he gets on an interview, he has fluid recall of facts, statistics to back up his emotional reasoning. So he has an emotional impact, which is this emotional, manifestor through the throat, but it is backed up by this ability to kind of organize logical information and present it in a coherent form. So I can hear that in him. I have the other side, the 1156, so I understand the structuring process that happens in the defined ajna, where
Mm-hmm.
where information is ordered into a coherent pattern, and connecting to the throat means that there's a clear recall. There's an ability to recall that structured information very clearly in a logical and consistent pattern through the throat. And so he does that through this 1762. It's quite remarkable the way that he draws up these facts to back his point whenever he's making one. He has the research to validate any argument he puts forward.
Yeah, and it's in a very strong placement in his gene
SQIQ,
keys. So exactly, he has the 17 in his SQ, and he has the 62 in his IQ. And so it's really, the 17 is like this mental drive of just research and wanting more and more and more knowledge, and wanting to, whatever new piece of knowledge that you get, you want to integrate it within the bigger framework. And you always, like the city is omniscience, like it's the all knowing. Eventually you want to get the full picture and go like bigger, 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 bigger.
Mm.
And then with the ability of the 62 to deliver this information with very precise speech, this gift of precision, like it's just like bam, 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 organized facts, like Damien was saying. And that's really, helping him, because if it was just his emotional wave and just him coming to an interview and just starting to cry and being touched by life and by humanity, nobody would really take him that seriously, but he has the 1762, which gives like so much structure to counterbalance this thing. So already this polarity between abstract, meaning like my life experience and how I experience life is impacting the collective, and then the logical, which is a much like colder, kind of process where it's just really about, this scientific thing of like, okay, let's stick to the actual facts. And then he has a third channel, which is the 1333, connecting the G center to the throat. And this one is also part of the abstract circuitry. And this one really is, the abstract circuitry in general is more connected to the past. And this one specifically is really the ability to look back at one's experiences and to draw the nuggets of wisdom from there. The mindfulness of the 33 is giving you this ability to really, and ideally, as you move through life, you are able to do this as much as possible. But there's also this, thing of going a bit in the past and looking back. And so there's, his emotions, yes, but also like a much more mindful, peaceful process of just really like, okay, let's draw the wisdom, and let's find like which revelations we can have from our life experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also just, when you're looking at the 17 and 62, I love also that the 62 in the IQ is a line 4, 4 1 again. He's got the 4 in the IQ and the 1 in the SQ. So he's got this strong theme of the 1, but that line 4 in the IQ is backing up. So not only is his speech precise, but it's backed up by an influential and inflexible mind. And you can see that when he gets into an interview and they get into a disagreement, he does not bend. He will not bend his position. He maintains his position strongly. So that's a feature very strongly of that line 4 IQ as well. I know I have that as well, and I have an inflexible mind. Once it gets rigid on an idea, it's very hard to bend it, and I see that in him as well.
Yeah. And another interesting one is well, even if we look at the sphere of his purpose, like he has a lot of emotional gates in strong placements, like the 6, in the shadow of conflict, and he surely faces a lot of conflict, but he can also be very good at, being diplomatic when it's needed.
Absolutely.
So that's another emotional gate here. Well, we already talked about the 36, and then the 55, like in his core wound. And I can see how this core wound of victimization, plus being a fifth line, and fifth lines have a tendencies of, feeling like they're the victims of this projection field. I can see it. Like sometimes I look at him like you're losing it a bit. You're losing your edge because you're getting too much into this thing of being victimized by whoever, by Twitter or by someone else or by whoever is trying to censor him. Like I feel this theme of victimization, which is very strong, and playing into it a bit. But once again, it is an emotional gate. Actually the 55 is all about, eventually getting freedom from your attachment and identification with your emotional states. But it's a very, like, the 55 is the quintessential solar plexus gate. So it's interesting that it's in there. The 30 in his culture, another emotional gate again. And then we go to the pearl, and there's this like cold scientific, again, like it's up here in the head, the 63. Interesting enough,
and a line 1.
Yeah, and he has the open head, and there's no connection. He doesn't have the full channel, so it's a hanging gate in an undefined center, which means that most likely his doubt and his inquiry never really quite reaches a point of satisfaction. Like it's always this, and it's interesting because my wife has the 63 in her pearl, and exactly the same, like undefined head, no channel, and I can see too how the doubt is always there. The inquiry never stops. Because if you have the 4, the 4 gives you understanding, and understanding gives you the answers. But when it's just like that and hanging, and on top of that with the open head, that it's not a stable energy, I can see how it can just eat at him all the time, and how there's always like more questioning to do. And it can also be a beautiful process, because this is like the typical scientific inquiry, where science should never become a religion, and you should never settle for a fixed truth. And there's always, more research to do, and more testing to do, and more inquiry to do. But it's a very beautiful quality of just, asking the right questions, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I also like to look at his activation sequence in total, right? If we look at the first four keys, the life's work, the evolution, the radiance, the purpose, and I love to just read the shadows because it gets like very clear what people get bothered by. Dominance,
Mm-hmm.
pride, turbulence, conflict. It's like that's basically what the major critique that anyone would give to him is those
Yep.
things. He's a dominant pride, conflict inducing turbulent man, with the 5-1 projection field on it. It's like it's very clear. But I also like looking at the gift there, because then we get a sense of like why people also really like him too, right? We've got synergy, artfulness, humanity, diplomacy. And we start to get a bit more of a sense of like what he's like when he starts becoming healthy.
Mm-hmm.
When he's in a healthy expression, he has that humanity and compassion. He has that, and I've seen interviews where he's very beautifully and easily diplomatic, and he
Yep.
like he creates a natural and easy flow between him and the person interviewing. He moves towards synergy. He moves towards a side by side relationship, which is really what synergy is, as I understand it. And there's an artfulness, and artfulness is the 26 is interesting because artfulness goes to invisibility. It's something that when you become truly artful, people don't even realize. It's like a form of elegance. It's like you're just naturally, innately doing it. And I
And
think
he has
this
the full channel.
has the full channel. And this 26 really is this 2644, I think, is probably the secret key behind his explosion on the scene of why he's become such a big force in the world, because the 2644 is really about putting the right thing in front of the right people. And somehow he's managed to put himself, which is the product and the message he's got, in front of and convince an audience that it's worth buying, which means following, but also buying his books, etc. And it's a conscious channel here, the 2644 as well, which is very interesting to me. And that it's separate from, he's a split definition, and it's separate from the manifestor part of him. So he's got this kind of running almost as a conscious internal projector. It's an internal part of him that is informing him of how to place the manifestor in him in the right position to actually gain exposure.
Yeah. And if we look also at the, because he's had quite a few health problems in the past, and even like quite recently, and it's interesting to look also at what he has here. Like, we know he's had problems with addiction, and you can see this 24 EQ, and you even the line 4, like kindness versus meanness, like I see the two in him so clearly.
Yeah.
But this addiction, and so when he's feeling emotionally overwhelmed, there's a big chance that he will go into some kind of addictive pattern, and he actually became addicted. I forgot the name of the actual substance. Yeah,
Benzodiazepines, yeah.
yeah, and that got him into real trouble. He was hooked on it, and he
Anxiety
was like,
medication. Yeah.
exactly. And the anxiety, because he has so much emotional definition,
Yeah.
this anxiety, this emotional anxiety and stress, and again, like his sphere of radiance, which is connecting to his health. Turbulence is this, like, the one thing that will take him out of his healthy state, and he's been in so much turbulence.
Yeah, how could he not be, the position that he's managed to find himself in, like the accelerated way in which he entered the world stage and gained popularship was like not staged. It was like
That was turbulent.
it was overnight, all
Yeah.
of a sudden everyone knew about him. Like from
Yeah.
a simple video that someone took about him questioning transgender rights, suddenly he was on the world stage.
Yeah. And even if we look at the centers, like open root, I mean, undefined root, undefined sacral, undefined root filtered through the theme of the 19, which is a very strong sensitivity. But that
Codependence.
sensitivity can really lead to a lot of stress in the body, and having an undefined root plus undefined sacral usually is a mix for that leads to burnout, which is something that, he's also had. So you can really see, like, also the health challenges and why he's had a hard time with this over time.
Especially if he's not aware of, the fact that he's an undefined root, an undefined sacral, and allows that to be impacted, allows himself to go into not self. So taking on, constantly trying to do more, constantly riding on the energy of others and the highs, and not giving himself adequate time to rest and enjoy his manifest the rest. It's very clear that he doesn't have consistent consistent adrenal energy or consistent, sacral energy. Those are not available to him. He runs purely on emotional and egoic energy and will energy of the will, which is like those ones that there's not as much of a check on them. Like you can easily keep running them until that there's nothing left, especially with so much emotional concentration there.
Yeah, yeah, that's the full picture of Jordan Peterson. You get a
It's
good sense
pretty,
of him.
yeah, it's pretty easy to just see. It's like it's right there. It's like, oh, what a easy design to read,
Yeah, I mean that's why we did it, because it's such an obvious one. We haven't done one of those videos for a while, and I know that you guys on YouTube were asking for it, and privately some of you even asked me for more of those celebrity videos. So we thought, to get back into it with a very easy one.
I've got another one. Look at his attractor sphere as well. The line 5, so again, projection line on his, very
Hmm.
seductive. The line 5 is seductive in the attractor sphere. And magnetism, you know, again, he attracts the world. The attractor sphere is part of the Venus sequence, which means it's relational, but it's not just the attractor sphere, as I understand, it's not just about attracting a mate. It's also how we attract people and opportunities and experiences to us. And
Hmm.
line 5, magnetism. Again, there's this kind of like I can see why he kind of there's these pieces that kind of like allow him to be so alluring and so like intriguing that people are like, what is this person? But because of all of this line 5 of like, the polarization around him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's really nice to go through this, because if you're like, again, him being someone who gets so much projected onto him, it's nice to just look at the facts, to look at the data that we have here,
Yeah.
and to be like, here it is, guys. The shadows that you're complaining about, or for the other 50% of you who are like fanboys and you're, die like Jordan Peterson diehards forever. Well, here are all the gifts and all the reasons why you love him.
Hmm.
Um, it's all there, and there's no blame game, when you have it
Mm.
like that. Like, it's just like,
Mm.
yep, that's a human, with his shadows and with his light and with, you know, doing what he can.
Doing what he can, doing the work that he can, with what he's been given, and like all of us, ideally moving towards a healthier expression of our innate design. 5-1 manifestor is a hard design to kind of exist in the world. You're naturally going to be polarizing. There's no two ways about it. Like it's not possible for him to not be polarizing.
Yeah, and for the, human design geeks here, most of you probably know that Ra was a 5-1 manifestor.
Yep.
Um, Same, very polarizing figure. Even now, so we're now in week 5 of the guides program, and we had a question of, a student who was asking, like, is it possible to just take the teachings and forget about the person through which it came? Like, because she has a really hard time with Ra. He's like, he can be such an asshole. I really don't like him. I don't like his position on this and this and that. And it's funny because I see that very often. It's the same thing with Ra. Half of the people love him, half of the people hate him. It's just very like 5-1 manifestor. I don't think you can get much more polarizing than that.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Great. Thanks. That was fun.
Well, thank you guys for listening. If you want to give any recommendations, anything that you, maybe like a specific, famous person that you want us to cover, maybe in the next video, just write it down in the comments and we'll take note.
Yeah, and we're going to get back into this regularly. This is a fun exploration to do. Composites, individuals, and play with it all.
All right. See you guys.
See you.